Good morning, folks, from the Circuit Enzo Edino Ferrari here in Imola. Will Buxton and Lawrence Barretto with you, bringing you breaking news.
Kimi Raikkonen, Antonio Giovinazzi will race for Alfa Romeo next year, Will.
Now, a couple of races ago, that would have come as something of a shock. Not necessarily the fact that Kimi was back, but certainly that Antonio Giovinazzi would be back. There have been some questions over that for some time.
Yes, Kimi, I understand, agreed a long time ago that he was going to stay in Formula One. It was just crossing those T's, dotting those I's, like Lewis is trying to do with Mercedes.
Yep.
And with Antonio, you're right, it is a bit of a surprise. I think we were expecting perhaps a Ferrari Junior in F2 to maybe get the opportunity to come through. Mick Schumacher had an opportunity, or should have had an opportunity in Germany to drive the car. But they've decided to go with experience. They've gone for stability, and I think they're very happy with Antonio, the way he fits in like a family.
Yeah, Mick Schumacher was the big name that was really linked with Alfa Romeo. He's seemed to be more leaning towards Haas now. Is that a result of Ferrari determining that Antonio is a neater fit here, or is it that Ferrari have determined that Mick is actually a better fit down at Haas?
Well, ultimately, as you say, it's Ferrari who get to decide. They get to put those pieces into the puzzle, and they've decided that the Alfa Romeo environment isn't quite right for Mick. They want him down at Haas. I think either way, they want to get Mick in here, as long as he wins the F2 Championship in Bahrain. But this is all Ferrari's call, and I think the other benefit, of course, of having Antonio in the car here, he's still racing, so if Ferrari ever need a reserve, let's not forget Antonio Giovinazzi is their reserve. If they ever need a reserve driver, they can just take him and plug him into the car. They've got someone with experience. With two maybe younger drivers, it would be a bit more problematic.
That's getting very convoluted. Let's look though at Alfa Romeo and what this means for them for the future. It's stability for them, and as we're seeing this year in the latter stages of this season, as we have done over the last couple of years, it's really where they've started to pick up, really where they've started to make those gains, running into a season next year where the car is carrying many similarities over. How important is that stability, that core driving stability going to be for them?
It's huge. With Kimi, they've got someone who gives them that feedback that they need to try and accelerate the development of the car, and he's really picked up in these last few races in terms of just the enjoyment, I think, of racing, the ability to give that detailed feedback, and the car's been making improvements. We're not quite at a level where they're scoring points at every race, but it is improving race by race, and I think for them to keep Kimi on board for next year, when they're trying to get that car better from this year to the next year with the stability, is hugely important. With Antonio, he's making baby steps forward. They're not as big, I think, as the team would hope, not as big as he would like, but I think that you can see that they're making progress, and with those two guys in the car, no one needs to learn anything next year, especially with less pre-season testing. They can just crack on kind of over the winter and into next year.
What does this mean now for the other Ferrari juniors? I'm thinking particularly of Eilert and Schwartzman, who were also spoken of quite highly for a Formula One seat in 2021.
I think with Schwartzman, that probably means he's going to do another season in F2. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's obviously his rookie year. He's performed very strongly. Why not go and win it next year and then be in a great position to come in 2022? He doesn't have to learn two cars, does he? Just one. The new regulations coming in. I'm not sure what it means for Callum. I think that if he maybe pushes Mick really closely, or even goes and wins the F2 title, then I think we might be talking about him again in a few weeks' time. But at the moment, it looks like Mick's in the ascendancy to make his step up into here. Callum is less sure.
Might we see maybe either or each one of them becoming an official reserve, either at Ferrari or Haas or Alfa Romeo?
I think we could see them all potentially having a role across those three teams. Perhaps if Callum doesn't get a drive, he would be better suited for a development role like Danny Kvyat had in the past. Esteban Gutierrez has had that role as well. I think they'll want to keep pushing them on. They'll want to keep developing them. So I think we'll see them around. This isn't, I don't think, the end of the road for any of them, even if they don't make a seat in Formula One.
And Marcus Armstrong as well, of course, who's had a difficult season, but tremendously talented Ferrari Junior. Right, that is the news then from the paddock. Kimi Raikkonen, Antonio Giovinazzi back with a Alfa Romeo team, which just yesterday had announced that the Alfa Romeo naming of this Alfa team would continue for another year. So all in all, a really happy, positive weekend for the team. From Lawrence, from me, thanks for tuning in, folks, and enjoy the weekend.